Picture yourself on a huge airport tarmac in China. A sleek silver jet sits before you, the C919. Up close, it looks like any modern airliner LEAP-1C engines built by General Electric and Safran, flight controls from Honeywell, radar from Rockwell Collins, fuel systems from Parker Hannifin, even Michelin tires. On paper, it's filled with the same trusted parts you'd find on an Airbus A320. The engines hum. The designers have checked every box. And yet, it can't leave its home country. Not because the plane is unsafe or poorly built, but because it's missing something that has nothing to do with metal or software permission. In aviation, that permission takes the form of certification from global regulators. Without that stamp, airlines can't lease it, insurers won't underwrite it, and most countries won't let it carry passengers on international routes. Think of the C919 like a luxury car assembled with BMW parts but parked at a border gate where the passport office refuses to stamp it. It's fully road-ready, yet stuck. That single paradox, world-class hardware, but no global passport, is the dramatic heart of this story. Next, we'll meet the people who hold those passports, the aviation regulators who decide whether a jet can fly the world. Every airplane needs more than wings and engines. It needs a passport. In aviation, that passport is called a type certificate. It's the official seal of approval saying, this jet is safe, and it meets every standard to carry passengers anywhere in the world. Without it, a plane is basically grounded outside its home turf. The two most powerful passport offices in aviation are the FAA in the United States and EASA in Europe. When they approve a plane, the rest of the world usually follows. If they don't, airlines face a nightmare. No leasing options, no international insurance, no code sharing with major partners. Imagine trying to sell a car that no bank will finance and no highway authority will register, even if it's perfectly built. That's the position China's C919 is in right now. Certification isn't just a safety check. It's the gateway to the global market. For companies like Airbus and Boeing, FAA and EASA approval is the lifeblood that allows their aircraft to fly on nearly every continent. For China, getting that same stamp is the difference between the C919 being a domestic shuttle and becoming a true competitor in world aviation. But here's the twist. Certification isn't only about safety. It can also be about power, economic and political power. And that's where the story of the C919 gets even more interesting. On paper, certification sounds straightforward. Engineers prove the plane meets safety standards, regulators sign off, and airlines place orders. But in reality, it's often much more than that. Certification can be used as a strategic lever, a way to slow down rivals or protect domestic champions. Think of it like a referee who also owns one of the teams. Yes, they enforce the rules, but they also have a vested interest in who wins. If approval takes months or years longer than expected, a competitor might lose billions in potential sales, giving established players like Airbus and Boeing more breathing room. For China's C919, this skepticism wasn't new. From the very beginning, many analysts in the West doubted whether the jet would ever make it through international certification. Was it because the aircraft wasn't safe? Or was it because granting approval would instantly create a third major player in a $3 trillion market? That's the tension hanging over every decision. And here's where China played its first clever move. Instead of building everything from scratch, it designed the C919 around Western certified parts, components regulators already trust. This wasn't just engineering, it was strategy. China knew the rules of the game, so it decided to play them better. When engineers built the C919, they didn't fill it with untested homegrown parts. Instead, they carefully chose Western components that were already certified by the same regulators who now hold the keys. Take the engines, the LEAP-1C, built by GE and Safran, cousins of the same engines that power the Airbus A320neo. The flight control system? Honeywell. The radar? Rockwell Collins. Even down to the tires, Michelin. These aren't unfamiliar suppliers, they're the backbone of global aviation. On paper, that should have made certification smoother. After all, if Airbus and Boeing jets use these very systems without issue, why wouldn't the C919? China even had a framework in place, a 2019 aviation safety agreement with the EU, meant to make cooperation and certification more transparent. By designing the C919 with so many foreign parts, Tarmac, the state-owned builder, hope to leave regulators with little room for doubt. But here's the catch. Even when you follow the rules, the final yes isn't guaranteed. Certification is still a decision wrapped up in geopolitics and market control. And that brings us to the real heart of the issue. The C919 isn't just a plane. It's a direct challenge to the Airbus-Boeing duopoly that's dominated the skies for decades. For over 30 years, the global aviation market has been a two-horse race, Airbus in Europe and Boeing in the United States. Together, they've controlled more than 90% of commercial aircraft sales, especially in the narrow-body market. The workhorse jets like the A320 and Boeing 737 that handle most flights worldwide. The C919 was built to break straight into this space. It matches the A320 and 737 almost spec for spec. Similar size, similar passenger capacity, even similar suppliers for engines and avionics. In other words, Tarmac didn't aim to reinvent the wheel. It aimed to offer airlines a third option in a market worth trillions, and that's exactly what makes the West nervous. Imagine a restaurant that's only ever had two chefs. Prices, menus, and recipes are predictable. Then a third chef shows up with the same ingredients ready to compete. Suddenly, the old chefs can't set the rules alone anymore. That's the disruption the C919 threatens to bring. If the C919 gained international certification, airlines around the world could use it as leverage against Airbus and Boeing, demanding lower prices, better delivery schedules, and more flexible financing. It's not just about one plane. It's about who controls the future of global air travel. But here's the twist. Even if the West never certifies the C919, China still has something neither Airbus nor Boeing can ignore. A domestic market so big it can keep the plane flying for decades. China's secret weapon isn't just technology, it's demand. The country is now the second largest aviation market in the world, and according to IATA projections, it's on track to surpass the United States by the mid-2030s. That means hundreds, even thousands of new aircraft will be needed to keep up with passenger growth. And this is where the C919 has a huge advantage. Even if the West drags its feet on certification, Chinese airlines can still buy and operate the jet domestically. In fact, they already are. Major carriers like China Eastern Airlines have placed orders, and dozens more are lined up. Tarmac doesn't need global approval to sell hundreds of planes at home. Think of it like a restaurant with a massive home crowd. Even if it's barred from a few foreign food festivals, it can thrive just by serving its own city. Because that city happens to have 1.4 billion people, and China isn't stopping there. Neighboring markets in Southeast Asia, Africa, and the Middle East are showing interest too. Regions where political ties and cost advantages could outweigh the lack of Western certification. But China knows relying on Western parts forever is risky. That's why its next step is even bolder. Developing homegrown engines and creating a parallel system that bypasses Western gatekeepers entirely. China understands that as long as the C919 depends on Western suppliers and Western regulators, it's vulnerable. So Beijing has launched a long-term strategy to secure independence, and maybe even flip the balance of power in global aviation. The first piece is engines. Right now, the C919 uses the LEAP-1C from GE and Safran, but Chinese engineers are already working on a domestic alternative, the CJ1000A. If successful, this engine would remove one of the last foreign choke points. It's not just about pride. It's about ensuring that no sanctions, export bans, or certification delays can ground China's flagship jet. The second piece is parallel certification networks. Instead of waiting forever on EASA or the FAA, China is striking bilateral agreements with countries in Asia, Africa, and along the Belt and Road. These deals could allow the C919 to fly in dozens of markets, even without Western approval. Over time, if enough airlines adopt it, China could carve out its own aviation ecosystem, one where its planes, parts, and rules dominate. The third piece is market leverage at home. China can simply require state airlines to buy domestic first, guaranteeing Tarmac a steady stream of orders. This gives the company the scale and revenue it needs to keep improving the C919, and to fund next-generation projects like wide-body aircraft, and even long-range challengers to the Boeing 787. In short, China isn't playing for a quick win. It's laying the groundwork for a parallel aviation order, and that raises a final, bigger question. If the skies become divided between Western and Chinese systems, what does that mean for the future of global travel? The story of the C919 isn't just about one airplane, it's about the future of aviation itself. We've seen how a jet packed with world-class parts can still be grounded by politics. We've seen how certification, meant to guarantee safety, can also act as a gatekeeper of markets and power. And we've seen how China is responding. By using its enormous home market, building its own engines, and forging a parallel certification system. The big question now is, are we heading toward a fragmented sky? One world where Airbus and Boeing dominate in the West, and another where Tarmac and Chinese rules dominate across Asia, Africa, and beyond? For passengers and airlines, that could mean higher competition, lower costs, and more choice. But it could also mean more complexity, as fleets and maintenance split along geopolitical lines. Either way, the C919 is more than a plane. It's a signal of change. For decades, the duopoly of Airbus and Boeing was unshakable. Now, a third player has entered the game, and it's backed by the world's fastest-growing aviation market. So what do you think? Will the West eventually certify the C919, or will China succeed in building a rival aviation ecosystem? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your take. And if you want to stay updated on China's aviation race, the future of the CJ1000A engine, and how this battle could reshape global travel, make sure to subscribe. Because the next time you board a flight, the plane waiting at the gate might not say Airbus or Boeing, it might just say Tarmac. Thanks for sticking through this deep dive into the story of China's C919 jet and the bigger picture behind it. If you found this breakdown useful and eye-opening, here's how you can keep the journey going. Hit that like button so more people can discover the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and tap the notification bell so you don't miss the next deep dive into global strategy, innovation, and power shifts. This channel is all about connecting the dots between technology, politics, and economics, showing you not just what's happening, but why it matters for the world we live in. The race for the skies is only heating up. The C919 is just the beginning, and the next chapters, from engine independence to international partnerships, could completely reshape aviation as we know it. So stay tuned. The story is far from over, and you'll want to be here when the next twist unfolds. Until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.